I love movies, and in this video, I'm going to cover the top 100 greatest films that I have ever seen and recorded. This is not going to be my 100 favorite list, because if I did that, it would include all the Rocky films, all the James Bond films, and every single Star Trek film that's an even number that does not include the word Nemesis. No, this is going to be films that have been out that are the upper echelon of films throughout history. If you think about it, there's been about 70,000+ films made just in America alone. That's not including India and the rest of the world. Now, I'm talking about 100, which means there's going to be a lot of films that are not on this list, and they're going to make a lot of people upset that they're not on this list. I'm sorry, but it deals with my sensibilities and the way I review films. If you don't know that, check out the link above, and I will leave a video there that will explain everything. It's also how I handle my conservative take movie reviews. I'm just doing it on a mass scale here. I've done these reviews for over 15 years now, but the system has been in place for even longer than that. And if you want, I will leave a link to this spreadsheet on my membership VIP series. If you go to theconservativetake.com and go to members and log on, you can get access to that. It's free. So you can see where I'm coming from here. But the important thing is this. For me, Hollywood has been a big letdown recently. And so I wanted to put something together that showed my love for films at a level that you probably wouldn't think that I would have seen. Mostly because I took movies off of the American Film Institute list, AFI 100, in which I've seen every single one of those, plus a series of books called The 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die. This was a very influential book. I'll leave a link to that below to check that out. It let me understand about the history of Hollywood, the history of filmmaking, not only just here in America, but all over the world. There are international movies on this list. There are several silent films on this list. And so when you think about that grand scheme of thing, that big body of work that's out there, 100 is a very, very small number. And so I have to admit, there are a few films on here that you may scratch your head. But understand, filmmaking is subjective. When I see something, it's something that I like. And that's what's going to be on this particular movie list. Now, the films that are rolling behind me, most of those are going to be on this list. But some of them are not. And you're going to be surprised by that. But that's how it is. Now, I will say one thing. I took my spreadsheet and I simply just took it and I just sorted it by reverse. I said, show me my favorite score. And from there, let's just go out with that. Problem is, some films failed to make the list. And so I told a friend of mine that I have a Dark Knight problem. Believe it or not, the Dark Knight from 2008 did not make the list. Crazy, considering how the Oscars snubbed it in that year, and eventually that turned the Oscars to go to up to 10 films for Best Picture because that film didn't make it, and it should have. Well, I refused to do that again, but the problem was, do I take it off for other films, as you'll see in the top 100 toward the back end? It was coming off of that. So how am I going to pull off films that I know need to be on this list, some of which have been showing behind me right now? Well, what I did was I saw the film Little Women that was reviewed this year by me. There's a link here on this channel as well on that. However, that film is brand new. And even though I thought it was a really, really good film with a really, really good storyline, I just couldn't justify kicking The Dark Knight out instead of that. I just couldn't. And I know the criticism I was not willing to take over that. But outside of that, only piece there with The Dark Knight being removed and put back in. Everything else is straight up from the spreadsheet. I basically sorted it down, and there's a ton of tiebreakers in here. And so that was kind of strange too, because even though I have a decimal system, there's a ton of films that are tied at 16.5 or 17.25, whatever. So to do that, I basically had tiebreakers based on my overall score, which is the highest weighted average for that. Again, if you look at that video, that will show you all of that. But also, it deals with like the year it was made. If it's older, I gave it the nod because, hey, we all know older films rock. Okay, so with that, I'm not going to do any more talking here. So I want to invite you guys to go grab yourself a beverage, relax. This is going to be a longer video, but kick back and let me know what you feel about this list, because I'm kind of a little nervous about sharing this with people, because I know you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he did that. But then again, some people are going to say, oh my gosh, he did that. And so I'm looking forward to hearing that feedback as well. So with that, with no further ado, this is the 100 greatest conservative take movie reviews of all time. Check it out. Okay, to kick this list off at number 100, this comes to us from the year 1988. It's a film by Robert Zemeckis. It stars Christopher Lloyd and Bob Hopkins in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. This film is absolutely incredible. It is totally special effects driven through no CG, but practical effects and hand-drawn animation. This film almost got Bob Hopkins committed because he was seeing things in his sleep and also while he was walking and talking after the filming of it. He would see animated characters pop in his head in front of him, and it almost sent him to the insane asylum. It was incredible. And his work on this film should have gotten him an Oscar because it's just totally fascinating how he was able to do this. The film is very dark in tone. It's based on a dark novel about the murder of a rabbit and trying to figure out how to figure out what happened with him. Well, this film doesn't do that, but it does have a lot of those undertones of that film noir type setting. It's a throwback to those eras of films, and we're going to cover several of those on this list. So, number 100, Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Just to show you how insane this list is, the next film, number 99, is The Shining, the classic from 1980, Stanley Kubrick, based on a Stephen King novel, starring Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall. Stars a guy who is an author, a recovering alcoholic. He and his family are wintering in Colorado, but his son has psychic abilities into the past of this history of this hotel, which has some pretty bad stuff, right? And it deals with the ascension into insanity that Jack Nicholson goes through. It is a intense film and is a very, very good film. It's a classic film. And so from 1980, The Shining. At number 98 from 1960 is Psycho. This film being made is Psycho because of what Alfred Hitchcock had to do to get it made. He and his wife did so much. The movie had people running out of the theaters panicking. This was a very controversial film of a proportion that we don't even understand today. It took a lot to do it. People who are in film school studied this film. The shower scene is the classic. It's just, you gotta see Psycho. It's incredible. At number 98 from 1960, Psycho. Coming to us at number 97 is Ben-Hur from 1959, starring Charlton Heston. This film won 11 Academy Awards. It was the Titanic before the Titanic. If you know the history of that film, this film is very similar in terms of its production. It took almost 8 months to film. It had, for example, 100 people working on the wardrobes alone. They were having 12 to 14 hour shifts nonstop, 6 days a week. The movie did phenomenally well in the box office. The chariot scene is the most classic scene in the film. It is a monster production, and I really enjoyed it, even though the hype was there. The story with the friendship between the two guys, Ben-Hur and his buddy, that's really the core of the story and how friendships can turn into enemies. And so Ben-Hur, number 97, check that out. So coming to us from 1984, number 96 on our list is Amadeus. It's about the life of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. And one thing I like about this film is the fact it teaches you about classical music and also shows you how brilliant this guy was. I mean, he was a prodigy. I keep thinking about Prince in my mind on this because at an early age, both of these people had so much talent. It's phenomenal and revolutionized the way music was even talked about and done. And so this movie at its core is a tragedy, but at the same time, it's a celebration of life and this incredible artist, Amadeus. So 96, Amadeus. From 1981 is Raiders of the Lost Ark, Steven Spielberg. This is one of my wife's favorite films. It is a absolute classic, and it's an action drama that also was a new approach to movies. It's kind of throwback to other swashbuckling times like The Thief of Baghdad, but this was a taking those serial thrillers into the modern era. Harrison Ford was at the height of his powers, fresh off of Star Wars. And yes, this film was really, really good. And I remember growing up how influential it was across all of culture and just talking about what you can do and everyone wanting to be an archaeologist. So at number 95 is Raiders of the Lost Ark. At number 94 comes Seven Samurai. It's an Akira Kurosawa film from 1954. And we see tropes of this all the time with movies like The Magnificent Seven and even A Bug's Life, where you have a town hiring off people to come protect them. In this case, it's a 1586 ancient Chinese town hiring off 7 Ronin samurai to come protect them from a raiding party who wants to steal their harvest. It is a trip and it's tragic, but we all know what happens in the end. The good guys win. But check this film out. It's actually a treat, and you will see why it's superior to everything else after it. So at number 94, Seven Samurai. So coming to us at number 93, our first silent film on the list is from 1925, The Gold Rush, starring Charlie Chaplin. Now, I would never have seen this film had I not gone through the process of learning about movie history. And I'm glad I did, because watching this film was just fascinating. My jaw was open the whole time, and laughing too, because it's really, really funny. To think that Charlie Chaplin figured this out a long time ago. He did his own stunts, and he was inspired primarily from the gold rush and the people having the adventure to do that. And also, believe it or not, the Donner Party, the party that had to invoke cannibalism just to survive. Well, he thought that tragedy and comedy lie right close to each other, and he used that as inspiration for this film. He said that he wanted this film to be the film that people thought of him about. This would be his legacy. And I agree that this is as good as it gets, even though there's another film on this list that I like a lot better, and we'll get to that down the list. So at number 93, The Gold Rush. At number 92 comes a science fiction classic from 1986, The Fly, starring Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis. I love this film from the very beginning I saw it. It's tragic, as you can imagine. It involves a guy who's a scientist who wants to invent the teleportation technology, where we can have like Amazon come to us like without any need to go anywhere. That could be really helpful nowadays. And of course, something happened. A fly got into the transporter, and of course, he got genetically mutated with the fly. And just like The Shining, it's a long descent to insanity and horror. And it's a love story, tragedy, and the ending is really touching. And I don't want to spoil that for you if you haven't seen it. But 1986, number 92 is The Fly. A personal favorite of mine, even though I don't want to watch it that many times. So here comes the first head scratcher possibly on this list, and it is from 1943, number 91. It's called The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. Colonel Blimp is a fictional character, but the overall story is original. And this is a film that totally shocked me when I saw it. I never would have thought I would like this film this much. And that's what happens when you watch a film like this. It's pretty long. It's like 163 minutes. And it takes you through this person's life and his death. And you understand the importance of camaraderie in warfare and friendship. And I just really liked it. And surprisingly, the humor was really, really great. It was just surprising. So that's why it's on the list, mainly because when I scored it, when I watched this film maybe 15 years ago, I had it so high and it's held up to this day. So at number 91, from 1943, The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp. See, this is why I like movies. At number 90, from 1942, a film starring Bette Davis, Claude Rains, Paul Heinrich. It's called Now Voyager. It is a romance film of epic proportions. So much so, I actually bought this DVD when I saw it about 15 years ago. And it's great. It's about a woman who's abused emotionally by her mother. And she goes off on a cruise and she falls in love. And when she comes back, she's not going to take it anymore. That's basically the gist of it. But it's a really well-written film. And Bette Davis, her acting ability in this, how she's just able to go from this docile person to this person who is just, I'm going to do it my way. I'm not going to be intimidated by you anymore. It's just a really, really good transition. And you can see how the two things juxtapose across themselves and how things pay out. It's a really, really good story. I highly recommend it. At number 90, Now Voyager from 1942. Okay, coming to us at number 89 from 1946. It's from the UK. It's Black Narcissus. This film is a film that is amazing to watch. And let me tell you a little bit about it. It was filmed in the UK on location to look like it was in the Himalayas, the mountains, but it wasn't. It had glass paintings and the special effects are phenomenal. It's about nuns who are trying to set up a school and a hospital in this area. And what's happening is on the outside, it's really beautiful, but on the inside, there's some stuff going on. And it's that contrast, it's that eeriness on the backdrop of this beautiful setting, this beautiful Technicolor. It's what makes this film so captivating. The acting is fantastic. Gene Simmons lights the screen up. You'll know when you see it. And I just love this film. When you finish watching it, you're like, what did I just see? But you do realize the brilliance in what you're experiencing. And that is from 1946 at number 89, Black Narcissus. Coming to us at number 88 from the year 1981 is Body Heat, starring Kathleen Turner, Richard Crenna, and William Hurt. This film is steamy, so keep the kids away. But this film gets a bad rap because of the trailer, which I couldn't show, that is just this sexual type of deal, but it's way beyond that. In fact, it is a film noir classic. It has great acting, it has a great storyline, good plot twist, and it's just shot wonderfully. William Hurt is amazing, Kathleen Turner is amazing, and I just think this is a film that's worth watching. When I saw this film and scored it maybe 15, 16 years ago, I was on this kick of film noir genre, and films like Asphalt Jungle and Double Indemnity. Those films really, really are fun to watch. And this film is a throwback to that in a modern era, if you consider 1981 a modern era. So at number 88, Body Heat. Coming to us at number 87 is Back to the Future from the year 1985. And what can you say about this film? It's nearly perfect, which explains why this list is so insane for it to be this low on it. But this film I absolutely love, can watch anytime. Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox probably has the best chemistry of any comedy adventure probably in history. And you know the story. There's no need to really talk about this film. We all have seen it. But the concept of it, a person going back in time to find out what their parents did and how they lived, it was just something that we all talked about. You know, your dad would say, yeah, we walk 10 miles in the snow every day to go to school. And we find out, they got a luxury limousine taking them every day for whatever reason. And it's just interesting how that was. The concept was great. And the sequels were good as well. But this is the best of the three. And therefore, it lands at number 87 on my list. Back to the Future. Coming to us at number 86 from 2008 is Chris Nolan's The Dark Knight. What a fantastic film. And I think we could all agree that this one is legendary. So much that it changed Hollywood. It changed the way they did the Oscar nominations. It also changed the way they looked at comic book genre films. This one took it seriously, and it set a tone of films to come. This film with Heath Ledger as the Joker is epic. Him winning the Best Actor for that was so well deserved. His performance carries the film. Christian Bale doesn't do a bad job either. The acting across the board is phenomenal. Christopher Nolan showed why he is basically a genius. And The Dark Knight, which deserves its own separate review, is going to be studied for years by filmmakers and critics alike to see how this piece of art was able to come to fruition of a material that we all knew about, Batman. And so with this, I really enjoyed this film, and I had to put it on this list because it just needed to be there. It fell out because of some tie-breaking scenarios, and some of the films I judged earlier may have been a little bit higher in some areas. And so as I reevaluated it, this one absolutely deserves to be on this list, and that is at number 86, The Dark Knight. So at number 85 from the year 1935 is the Marx Brothers' A Night at the Opera. You got Groucho, Harpo, and Chico doing their thing, and it is hilarious, incredible stuff. And AFI, the American Film Institute, moved this into their top 100 films of all time. So that in of itself should say all you need to know. It's just that when I see something like that, I don't take that for what it is until I actually see it. And then I'll be like, oh, well, yeah, that's why it's on the list. And I totally agree. This film is one of those. The chemistry obviously is amazing. These guys just do things that are just out of this world, comedically speaking. And so absolutely at number 85, A Night at the Opera from the year 1935. So coming to us at number 84 is The Naked Gun. This film is probably one that probably shouldn't be on this list. I mean, it's a classic. I mean, for certain, but mainly because I'm putting my feelings above probably where I should. I mean, this is a film that my roommate in college played over and over and over again. So it has a lot of fond memories to me. And it is a film that, beyond the surface of it being a slapstick kind of deal and wacky comedy and one-liners, it has a star-studded cast. Of course, it has O.J. Simpson, Leslie Nielsen. It has Priscilla Presley, Reggie Jackson, has a great cameo of the Queen, who's not really the Queen, but it's a dead ringer for the Queen. And it's just, Ricardo Montalban, can't forget him. This film has it all. I mean, it's another thing about having a film that has a one note kind of thing, but this thing goes from the start to the middle to the end, and the end is almost the strongest part of the film, and it gets stronger as the movie goes on. That's very rare nowadays. Sometimes these kind of films kind of fall and crumble under their own weight. Not this one. The Naked Gun is an absolute classic, and now that I think about it, it definitely deserves to be on this list. And so check it out. It's from 1988. It is called The Naked Gun, and it sits right now at number 84. At number 83, and I don't want to repeat myself, is Groundhog Day. This film is a film that I've seen many times. I used to go to sleep on it, watching it, because it's just one of those kind of things that was just, to me, I love Bill Murray. Harold Ramis is awesome. This film is one of those films that was like lightning in a bottle. Harold Ramis and Bill Murray didn't get along after this film. In fact, they didn't speak for many years until basically he was about to die. Harold Ramis, that is. And it's really tragic if you know the backstory behind it. So watching this film is kind of like one of those things, I really have a hard time thinking past that without getting, a soft spot. But this film is almost perfect. I mean, the concept was just amazing. Bill Murray plays it absolutely to a hilt. Phil, who's in Punxsutawney, dealing with the groundhog, Punxsutawney Phil, and it's just off the chain. And it even relates to us as people, because he does the kind of things that I would probably try and do if I was there for that long. It's a cult following film, totally off the charts. I love it. And it's one of those things that is timeless and it's going to go down in film history. It's one of the greatest comedies of all time. So at number 83, Groundhog Day. So from 1959, we have Some Like It Hot, and it comes in at number 82. This film is by director Billy Wilder. It stars Marilyn Monroe, Jack Lemmon, and Tony Curtis. Great chemistry. And this is a film that, as I was coming up, realized or knew or heard that this film was the greatest comedy of all time, or one of the greatest comedies of all time. And I was like, okay, yeah, really? It's probably just two guys dressed up as women, whatever, ha 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 ha. But no, it's not that at all. Well, it is that, but the backdrop from the St. Valentine's Day Bloody Massacre takes this to another level, and it makes the intensity of this film to a level that I was not expecting. This is a comedy, yes, but it's actually kind of horrific in a lot of areas. And it's like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that, especially from a film this old, from 1959. Now, I know in the 60s, Hollywood started trending towards more the nuanced hero villain, sort of like Popeye Doyle from The French Connection, or HUD from Paul Newman, where you have these characters that are good or somewhat good or not really good, whatever. And I get that. But this was an early film, and it has violence in it and comedy that really blends well together. And Billy Wilder is a really brilliant director, and I recommend you checking out any of his films. In this particular, Some Like It Hot is fantastic. It sits at number 82, and it's from 1959. Okay, this next film shouldn't get any controversy on the list because it's on everyone's top 20 list of all time. It's On the Waterfront. It's from 1954. It stars Marlon Brando, one of the early method actors. When he came on the scene, Hollywood was enamored by this guy. And this film has one of those lines, and you've heard it many, many times. It's, I could have had class. I could have been somebody. I could have been a contender instead of the bum, which is what I am. Let's face it. It's that line, that self-deprecating line that Brando says in the back of the car after he implicates a person for a crime and he's being shunned by the dock workers, because this is a film about corruption on the docks, racketeering, and crime, and the pressures that face those people who tried to go against that is just very powerful. And the way Brando delivers that line is just phenomenal. And it's one of those things that just gets there because it's like we all kind of feel that some ways about ourselves. What could we have been, or what could we have done differently? But in this case, he puts it out there on the screen for us to see and opens himself up to that. And we can all relate and appreciate that. So at number 81, it's a fantastic film, one of the all-time greats, On the Waterfront from 1954. I think sometimes we think movies that are old are kind of nice and clean and not dramatic, or, no. This film from 1929 is All Quiet on the Western Front. It's number 80, and it's horrifying. It's a World War I piece by a guy named Paul, who is a German soldier who's caught up in trench warfare, and he has to go through some things that are just horrible. One thing is he has to kill somebody and has to sit with him all night as he dies. And he's talking to this body, trying to prevent him from dying. And so that just gives you a taste of this film. And it doesn't end well for anybody. Well, that's how war is. And I think that's what this film is trying to get across. I reviewed a film called 1917, which is a World War I film as well. This and that film are good counterparts. I'm not sure which one's better, but they're both fantastic takes on a really horrific war that gets forgotten because I guess World War II was so much worse. So from 1930 is All Quiet on the Western Front, and it comes to it at number 80. So from 1964 at number 79 is probably the film that everybody pretty much agrees is the best James Bond film, and that is Goldfinger. Sean Connery, the iconic Bond. This is the film that put James Bond on the map. It made more money than anyone to that date combined. It was the third installment, and this is Ian Fleming's masterpiece character, and this one is really the best one. And I have seen all these films, and I recently watched this film again, and I watched like 7 or 8 or 9 in a row, and this one is clearly superior to that. Of course, you had the iconic scene of the woman who's painted in gold on the bed. That scene shocked Hollywood when it came out, but it goes beyond that little trope. It is a much deeper film in terms of the plot, and the bad guy is so excellent. And of course, you have the other characters in this film that are really, really phenomenal. And so the deal with this is that James Bond is a character that is cemented in this particular role in Goldfinger. And I highly recommend you checking it out if you haven't seen it. It is our 79th film from 1964, Goldfinger. And now we come to our number 78 film, our third film from the director Robert Zemeckis, and that is from the fantastic year, 1994, Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump is about a guy named Forrest Gump who is going through life walking between the raindrops. He has a lower IQ than most, but it doesn't stop him from doing what he needs to do. He also enhances the lives of everyone around him. He views the world through three persons: God, his mother, and Jenny. And you could probably toss in Bubba as an honorable mention. But anything outside of that, he doesn't really deal with. And if you come against any one of those, he is going to get on you because he is a loyal person, which is one of the reasons why I like Forrest Gump as a person. And I think why many people like him as well, because he's a genuine person who treats you and looks at you as a person and doesn't judge you for anything other than you being an individual and for who you are as that individual. It's a fantastically casted film. It's got Sally Field as the mother playing it perfectly. It's got Robin Wright as Jenny. Fantastic. It has Gary Sinise as Lieutenant Dan. Amazing. I mean, this film has everything. The music, the score, it's just top notch from top to bottom. In a fantastic movie year. I thought it was probably the best one of that year, but there are better ones, which is amazing. So at number 78 is Forrest Gump, and it comes to us from the year 1994. Okay, so I pretty much guarantee that this one right here, number 77 from 2014, is going to be the most controversial one on this list so far, if not overall, and that is the Lego Movie. Stars Chris Pratt, and it is phenomenal. It's from the directors Lord and Miller. They do a great job. The screenplay is very dense. You watch it 4 times and get something out differently every single time. You may wonder, why is this movie on the list? Well, I put this up here so you know where I'm coming from in terms of my scoring. So you know, I guess, from a transparent standpoint of how I'm coming to this number. And I can totally justify this even over the Batman Lego Movie, which I think this is even better than that. But the thing is that this film did not get nominated for a Best Animated Film for the Oscars. And some people will say, well, that's why it shouldn't be on this list. Well, the reason why it wasn't on that list is because it has a human element, and by the Academy rules, you can't have it as a animated film, which I think is totally bogus. It should have been on there. It's one of the best films of all time in this genre. It does an amalgamation between stop animation and CG, and it looks great. It's fantastic, and I will stand by this decision all day long. So at number 77, the Lego Movie from 2014. And so from 1937, number 76 on our list is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs from Walt Disney. And this film is an absolute classic. It broke all kinds of boundaries, hand-drawn animation. The thing about Disney films, you watch it, the animation was just perfect, especially when you're dealing with the human element, how people looked and moved. It was really, really precise and crisp, especially when you look at the main characters like a Belle or a Snow White or any of the main characters. They really do a lot of detail on that. So they look really, really realistic in their reactions. And so Walt Disney spent a lot of money on this, and he was a perfectionist on this. He wanted to make sure it was the best it could possibly be. And it was, and it's a classic, and every animation can basically give homage to this because this is where it all started. And so number 76 from 37 is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So at number 75, we have Whiplash. It comes to us in the year 2014. It stars Miles Teller, J.K. Simmons, and Paul Reiser in a small role, but to me, an important one. This film is about a student who's a drummer who's trying to advance into the most elite school in the country, or at least New York City. And J.K. Simmons is the teacher that can help him get him there. J.K. Simmons is the teacher who you do not want to be part of because he is a monster. He drives his will forcefully through blunt force trauma and also through manipulation. And he's masterful. Winning the Oscar for this was a no-brainer for him. And so J.K. Simmons well deserves. But Miles Teller does a good job too keeping up. His drumming skills is great. I mean, this film is about drumming, and it's about what you want to be in life and who can get you there and what are you willing to do to get it. And Whiplash is a film that I can watch at any moment in time. It's fascinating to see. and the ending is one of the best endings you will ever see. It is phenomenal. 75 is Whiplash from the year 2014. Number 74 is Saving Private Ryan. Steven Spielberg did this in 1998, nominated for Best Picture. Tom Hanks, Matt Damon, and a really, really stellar cast across the board. This film was so visceral, so realistic. And I know this because the veterans who were screening this, who were actually involved in the Normandy invasion, said so. They said that's how it was. And men who are in their 80s and 90s were weeping openly in the theater. This film is how it was. And what Steven Spielberg did was so visceral, the first 30 minutes, by having the handheld cameras and showing the realness of the war and how the randomness of the war is, how war is in general, really came home to a lot of audiences. When I saw this film, nobody left the theater when it was over. It was incredible. And so to the people in our armed services who have fought in combat, our veterans, God bless you and thank you for your service. This film is phenomenal, and that's why it sits at number 74 on my list from 1998, Saving Private Ryan. At number 73, I'm sure many people are going to be upset that this is not higher on the list. It is Goodfellas from 1990, Martin Scorsese, starring Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro, and Joe Pesci. Stars these guys dealing with the true story of Henry Hill and his characters, James and Tommy, played by Pesci, who won the Best Supporting Actor Oscar for a phenomenal historic role, over the top, powerful. And this film, if it lacks one thing, is basically a narrative. And that's why it doesn't go higher. It's high in all the other categories, but in terms of story, it's just, even Martin Scorsese, it says this himself, it just doesn't have one. It's just them in their lives and doing it. Now, that's not a knock on the film. It's just the other films that have that tend to be a little higher on my scoring. Just how it works out. But I would watch this a lot sooner than I watch many, many others on my list. So if that's any consolation. What's also interesting is the actual true story behind this and how closely it follows this actual movie. It's pretty fascinating. Check it out if you have a chance. So at number 73 from 1990, Goodfellas. Number 72 is Rocky, starring Sylvester Stallone. It's a role that he made for himself after watching a Muhammad Ali fight. He decided to write a screenplay, which took him about 3 days. He took that screenplay to United Artists. They liked it so much they wanted to take it, but they wanted to put Robert Redford or James Caan or even Burt Reynolds in the role. He said, no, I want to take this role. He insisted on it. He knew that Irving Winkler, a producer, who also ironically was the producer of Goodfellas and many other films, he knew that if the budget was low enough, they had the power to greenlight it. And so he held to his guns and through a long process was able to get it greenlit and became the star that he is today. Rocky is a phenomenal film. Adrian, his love for this girl and her arc in the story, and her brother Paulie, you know it all. Apollo Creed. I mean, this was just a fantastic movie. The score will get you going. You hear that music going, it's lights out. I like Rocky 2 a little bit better, but in some ways, but I think Rocky is where it all starts, and I got to give it its props here. So at number 72, Rocky from the year 1976, our bicentennial year. 2001 brings us our 71st film, and that is Moulin Rouge. It stars Nicole Kidman, Ewan McGregor, and John Leguizamo. And it's a film that is a musical, and some of you are going to be like, Kyle, dude, what are you doing? This is a film that you either love absolutely or you hate it with a passion. And I totally feel those people who hate it, because when I first saw it, I actually liked it, but it took a couple of musical numbers for me to get where they were going. And they're taking basically pop music and they're putting it into a operatic type of big band type production. And that's what it is. Christian is a character played by Ewan McGregor. He falls in love with Nicole Kidman's character. She is a actress on the Moulin Rouge stage, and it's a love triangle of sorts. And so it's a powerful film. The numbers are incredible. Just the technical merits of this film are just at a level that most people aren't really ready to deal with. The color, the lighting, the editing is so sharp and crisp and fast, and the digital manipulation that they do with things, it needs to be seen at the highest quality possible to really appreciate it. These actors and actresses sing their own parts. So Ewan McGregor and Nicole Kidman are singing, and it's great. So check this out. Number 71, Moulin Rouge from 2001. So number 70 is from 1980. It's called The Elephant Man. It's a David Lynch film starring Anthony Hopkins, John Hurt as the Elephant Man, John Merrick, and Anne Bancroft. It's about a man, John Hurt in this case, John Merrick, who has a massive deformity in his face. He wears a covering, but he's being exploited by freak shows and other people. And Anthony Hopkins plays a doctor who's trying to rescue him from that. This film is powerful. It punches you dead in your chest. It's very emotional, and it's in black and white, and it fits that genre. If you remember a show, if you've seen a movie called Freaks, it reminds me of that. This is a modern film. It didn't have to be in black and white, but it was, and I think it's appropriate for the type of subject matter that we're dealing with. So from 1980, at number 70, Elephant Man. So at number 69, we have Jaws. It comes to us in the year 1975. It's Spielberg's first major film. It was the original blockbuster. The shark didn't work. We know the story. And because he had to work around that, it made the film way more suspenseful. Similar to the way Hitchcock would do his things, especially with Psycho in the shower scene, but never showing the knife hitting the body. It's just a way of doing it. And it's actually very, very powerful doing that. And so to me, it kind of suffers from the curse of having this trope that you think, okay, this is just a slasher film in the water. And in some ways it is, but really people will miss out if you don't see it, is the fact that there's a human condition element in here. And I'm not going to give it away, but Robert Shaw plays this character by the name of Quint. He's my favorite character. Watch for his monologue at the end of the film. Roy Schneider's in it. He plays the sheriff of this New England town that's being terrorized. And Richard Dreyfuss is playing the marine biologist who's helping them catch this shark as well. So at number 69, Steven Spielberg's Jaws. At number 68, we have a film from 1960 called The Apartment. It's our second Billy Wilder film. It's a film that I like. I own it personally. And just so you know, I kept it impartial. I didn't move it up any further, even though I wanted to. And it stars Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine and Fred McMurray. Lemmon plays a character who is trying to move up the corporate ladder in his office, and he has an apartment. As he's being single, he lends it off to his coworkers and his boss, etc. And I'm sure you can guess what they're using it for. Anyway, you would think that that's risque for 1960, which it probably was. But Billy Wilder, just like with Some Like It Hot, was breaking the barriers there. He was pushing the envelope. And so what he does do is explore the dark nature of humans, and in a way that's still kind of playful, but under the surface, it's like, wow, that's kind of beat up. Anyway, it's a film that I like. It won Best Picture for 1960. It's called The Apartment, and it's number 68 on our list from 1960. All right, talk about a film that is pretty much amazing. It's our 67th film. It's called All About Eve. It's from 1950, and it stars Bette Davis and Anne Baxter. Anne Baxter is like, wow, she is. This is what drives this film. But it was not just her, because this is the only film in Hollywood history to have 4 female Academy Award nominations. And so this film was nominated for, I believe, 14. It won 6. It's great. Bette Davis plays an aging Broadway actress, and Eve, who is played by Anne Baxter, manipulates her way into her life and becomes a star on her own. You kind of see that in the first scene. And it's just, the acting's off the charts. You know, Marilyn Monroe actually makes an early appearance in this film. And so, yeah, I just love this film. It's just all around great. So at number 67, we have All About Eve from 1950. At number 66 is The Thin Man. It's from 1934. It stars William Powell, Myrna Loy, and Skippy as their dog, Asta. This is Nick and Nora Charles, the traveling couple that goes around and solving mysteries. Not only is this film exciting and fun and all of that, but it is historically significant because it's the first film to introduce the big trope in Hollywood where the detective finds the killer amongst the crowd in a room of all of the suspects, where there's a big reveal. hence Murder, She Wrote, and any other mystery that you've seen over the past 30 years. And so this is that film. It's historically significant. And so not only that, it's also very fun. It's charming. The dog's cute. And so I like this one. It's one of the earliest films I watched in black and white. And so this is kind of my introduction into older movies. And so with that, number 66 is The Thin Man from 1934. So for number 65, we have Trouble in Paradise. It's from 1932. It stars Miriam Hopkins, Kay Francis, and Herbert Marshall. The film is pretty simply put a caper where everyone is trying to one-up one another. It's the basic story of trying to outdo everyone else, and the screenplay is just shocking and surprising. It gets you guessing. You don't know what's going to happen. You just know at the end someone's going to try and one-up somebody else. And the thing is you have two people who fall in love. One happens to be a jewel thief and one happens to be a pickpocket, and they team up to rob a woman, a beautiful woman, who is an owner of a perfume company. She's got a safe. They're trying to get into the safe. She's got two suitors that are wanting some of that as well. And it's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You'll never figure out until the very end what's going to happen. It's fun. It's historic. And it's been rated as one of the highest films by the AFI. And so I enjoyed it when I rated this film about 17 years ago. And I think you'll enjoy it too. So this react sits at number 65, A Trouble in Paradise from the year 1932. Think of The Perfect Crime and then take it one step further. That's number 64 on our list, and it's called Sleuth. It comes from the year 1972. It stars Laurence Olivier and Michael Caine. It's the last film directed by All About Eve director Joseph Mankiewicz. And this film is about two people. In fact, that's all you pretty much see in this film is Olivier and Caine. Olivier is an older gentleman who is under the impression, or he knows that Michael Caine's character, Milo, is having an affair with his wife. He wants to get rid of his wife, so he wants to get some insurance money. So he wants Michael Caine's character, Milo, to go out and rob them, and then they would fake the jewelry and all that. So if I go too much into it, I'll spoil the ending. But it's another one where both sides are trying to one up one another. Andrew is the character played by Olivier. He's a crime novelist, and so he has this grandiose idea of the perfect crime. And so you got to check this out. The dialogue is what this is all about. That's what drives it. And so yes, from 1972, it's Sleuth. It's a film that many people have forgotten about, but it's a classic, and I really, really enjoyed this film. Number 63 on our list comes from Japan, and it's the second film from Akira Kurosawa, and this one is called Rashomon. It's from 1950, and this one packs a punch. Coming in at 88 minutes, it's short and lean, but it is good. It is a story of 4 accounts: a woodcutter, a bandit, a samurai, and a wife, a murder underneath the Rashomon Bridge. It's raining in the beginning, and at the end, it's sunny, which also leads to another element in the film that I can't say right now. But it's basically the differences between 4 people witnessing the same thing. And that is what this film is all about. It's the human nature and the human condition. And so this film is something you got to check out. It's a classic, and it's been told many, many times by many, many other directors, but this is done the best. Number 63, Rashomon from 1950. Number 62 comes in at one of our oldest films from 1928. It's a silent film called The Crowd. And The Crowd stars James Murray and Eleanor Boardman. And it's about a couple, well, actually about a dude, right? This guy is a guy who was born on 4th of July, 1900, and his dad told him that he was going to be special and important, and he thought he was too. So he grows up, gets married, and he gets married at Niagara Falls with his wife, and things are going well, but then tragedy hits, and so dealing with the situation of tragedy and expectation and not being able to live up to what you thought you would be at an early age. And it's about compassion as well. It's about reconciliation. It's a powerful film, and if you haven't seen many silent films, this is one to check out. It pulls at you, and it's really, really highly rated. It shows good footage of New York, and it's just a really, really, really good film. And no matter whether that's talking or not, doesn't make any difference. A story is a story. And so I watched this film about 18 years ago. I rated it really high, and it's something that I will revisit pretty soon because I like the historical nature of it. So at number 62 is The Crowd from 1928. Every once in a while, you come across a film that just brings a smile to your face. Well, this particular one does it for me. At number 61 is The Adventures of Robin Hood with Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland. It's from 1938. Absolute classic. Swashbuckler. Errol Flynn was the man. We'll see him again later on another movie. And just great. I mean, I loved growing up to this film. It's even in a Bugs Bunny episode, which I thought was just, as a kid growing up, I thought that was just awesome. Anyway, it's about Robin Hood. He's on his way to protect King Richard the Lionhearted against the Sheriff of Nottingham, and adventure ensues. And of course, Olivia de Havilland is Maid Marian. She's beautiful, and of course, there's romance there. And Errol Flynn is just so smooth. And so this film is just fun. It's a swashbuckling adventure. It's action-packed, and it's just a good time. And so the color is brilliant, and I just can't speak highly enough about this. I watched this about 4 months ago again. It's just one thing you watch and you just keep watching because every scene moves on to the other, and you just go through and it just flies by. So at number 61 is Adventures of Robin Hood, and it is from 1938. At number 60 is 1917. It's from 2019. I have a review on this. Just check out my channel. You'll see it there. So I won't speak too much on this other than the fact that it is a one-shot film, meaning it takes two characters and it follows them in one shot all the way through the movie from start to finish. And it's really, really eerie. So it's a landmark thing that is done that I just don't understand how they're able to do this, but it's amazing. So check out my review on that. But at number 60 is 1917 from 2019. So at number 59, we have Captain Blood. It stars Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland again. And this one is the one that actually got Errol Flynn his legendary Hollywood status as a megastar. The studio took a chance on getting him in there because he was relatively unknown, but they were looking for someone to replace the aging Douglas Fairbanks Sr. And this guy absolutely did that, because if you know Fairbanks, as we'll talk about him in a later movie, he was a very physical actor who could do all kinds of cool things on screen, and Errol Flynn was the same way, very talented. And so this film was a megastar for him. It's about a guy who's a physician who gets sold into slavery. He and his crew take over the ship and become pirates. And so that's pretty much the deal there. But it's more than that. It's just a fun film to watch, and I really enjoyed it. So 1935 is the film year, and it's Captain Blood, and it comes to it at number 59. Number 58 comes to us from the UK, and it's from the fantastic film year of 2013, and it is Philomena. It stars Steve Coogan and Judi Dench. Judi Dench plays the real person, Philomena Lee, who spent 50 years tracking down the whereabouts of her child. And the deal with that was at an early age, she got pregnant and was sent to a convent where she was forced to give the child up for adoption. And so she spent the next 50 years finding out what happened to her child. It's a heart-wrenching film. My wife's not too keen on it because it's so emotional. I liked it because I love Judi Dench, but this film is shockingly tragic in the fact that this is a true story, and it's just a mystery that unravels, and you get sucked into the story so quickly, and it's very fascinating. So at number 58, Philomena from 2013. So this film was a fun one. It's called Goodbye Lenin. It comes from us from Germany in the year 2003, and it's a black comedy, and it is hysterical. Essentially, you have a father and a mother. The mother is a devout East German, and she is all about the communist Russia mother state, whatever you want to call it. She's all about it. Unfortunately for her, she gets into a coma. During that process, the Berlin Wall comes down, Germany is reunified, and now she wakes up post all of that, and the doctor says, hey, look guys, you can't stress her because if you do, she might die. And so the son, in his love for her, goes on this mission to hide the fact that Germany is now one country and now they're under capitalism. And so they're hiding stuff. They're changing all the labels on the food, or they're trying to find old state bought and state sanctioned products into the house so they won't see like McDonald's or anything like that to stress her out. And so the film is really, really good. If that doesn't hook you, nothing will, but it's definitely one you want to check out. There's some subtitles on it, but doesn't matter. It's just as funny as if they were talking in English. And so number 57 is Goodbye Lenin from 2003. Number 56 from 1945 is an Alfred Hitchcock classic, Spellbound. Stars Gregory Peck and Ingrid Bergman. And that should hook you right there, especially when you deal with a mental asylum where a person is there who is not who he claims to be. And the less you know, the better. Ingrid Bergman is just amazing. She's one of my favorite actresses in the old school. I think with Audrey Hepburn, she's right up there with them. But Gregory Peck is also amazing in this as well. A very young Gregory Peck, I must say. And Hitchcock is at the height of his powers here. Even in 1945, he's just getting started. But you can just see the essence of his genius when it comes to writing suspense. There's a reason why they call him the master of suspense, and Spellbound and pretty much any other film that's going to be on this list is going to prove that exactly. So at number 56, Spellbound from 1945. Number 55 is Dances with Wolves. It's from the 1990 film year and it won Best Picture. It's Kevin Costner's pet project. He directed it, everything, and he got the Oscar for it. And it's a great film on many, many levels. It's long, it breathes, and it's an arc that deals with a person who was in battle. Really, he thought he was going to die. He survived, and he gets put on an outpost by the U.S. military and basically gets befriended by Native Americans, and it takes a process for that to happen, and he understands that culture, and then that arc continues on. And if you haven't seen it, check this thing out. It is something that is just really, really compelling. And you just see how this man changes from one person in the beginning of the film to the very end of the film. Kevin Costner, I'm a huge fan of him. And this film is probably his best film, especially from an award standpoint, because it won just about everything for that year. So at 1990, the film year, number 55, Dances with Wolves. And number 54 is another Best Picture winner from a producer who actually starred in the role and got the Oscar, and that's Clint Eastwood for Unforgiven. This film asks the question, how hard is it to kill a man? And that question is answered in no uncertain terms in this film. It's tough. It takes a special kind of killer to do that. And of course, Clint Eastwood is that killer, but he's retired. He doesn't do that anymore. He and his buddy Morgan Freeman get assigned to a duty of a woman who gets slashed in the face. She's a prostitute, and a group of her friends tried to raise money to get them to kill the people that did this. Gene Hackman's in this film. He plays a really, really good role in this, and he is a bad person pretty much. And Clint Eastwood is just trying to refrain from being bad because his wife wouldn't like that. She passed away. And so it's a classic film. I love it. The ending is so awesome, and it is the pinnacle of Clint Eastwood in his career, fitting for Best Picture and Oscar on his behalf. And so number 54 is Unforgiven, a must-see film by any standards from 1992. Number 53 is T2 Judgment Day, James Cameron's follow-up to his original hit Terminator. This is easily on my list of the greatest sequels of all time. In order to be a good sequel, you have to have a really good first one, and Terminator was a good one. This one takes it to another level. It brings back Linda Hamilton. It introduces Robert Patrick as the new bad guy, and it brings back Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course, I'll be back, to be the good guy this time against the T-1000, which is a molten liquid type of deal that can change and whatever. And it really pushed the envelope for CG at the time this came out. This movie is from start to finish just intense. James Cameron shows his genius in making these kinds of films. And we have another film that's just even better than this down the line. You probably know what it is. And it just shows how good James Cameron is as a director. This movie is an absolute classic. It just grabs you from the very beginning, from start to finish. And the relationship between Arnold Schwarzenegger and the young son, John Connor, is just fantastic, giving him more humanity. And so I'm sure everyone on this video has seen this movie. If you have not, treat yourself. Check out the first one first, and then watch this one and stop there because the rest of them pretty much suck. So with that, Terminator 2 is number 53 on my list. Came out in 1991. All right, number 52 is Do the Right Thing. Do you know? Do you know? Do you know? Yeah, it came out in 1989, this summer. This movie was hype when it came out. As an African-American man, as a black man, we loved this film. It was just so on point. Public Enemy was blasting. Me being from the DC area, didn't really get all the vibrant culture within the Brooklyn community, but we still thought it was pretty dope. And this film was pretty dope. And it was just a phenomenon in terms of just culture. It stars Spike Lee, who directs it as well. And he is a person who delivers pizza for Sal, played by Danny Aiello, who got an Oscar nomination. And Spike Lee also got a nomination for Best Director for this as well. He got a Cannes Film Festival nomination as well. This film had a lot of accolades. It brought up a lot of new talent, like Martin Lawrence's first appearance. It had Rosie Perez, who's played his girlfriend. It had Giancarlo Esposito, the guy from Breaking Bad and now The Mandalorian. And this film is just full of young talent. And my favorite is Robin Harris, the late Robin Harris. It's just, and also Samuel Jackson was in this as well. Ozzie Davis. It just goes on and on and on. And the thing is, this is about racial tension in Brooklyn, and it just ends badly. And it isn't really in your face like his politics of today, which is why this to me was pretty cool, because it's not just trying to slam it down your throat, like some of his other ones, like the Black Klansman. That was just down your throat. Come on. We don't need that kind of, prodding. We know what's going on. Just show it to us. We can figure out for ourselves. That's the only problem I have with Spike Lee today. But Spike Lee back then had something to say, and this movie was stylistic. It was awesome. And yeah, it's one of the best films in history. And it's number 52 on my list. And it came out in 1989. At number 51, bells will be ringing. Hey, this is a Christmas film. Die Hard. I'm sorry, 1988. This film just totally kills it. I remember when I first saw this film back in, when I was, never mind. I was jacked. And the cool thing about this was Bruce Willis. We knew him from Moonlighting. It was a totally inspired cast. But really, the one that really makes this film what it is Alan Rickman as Hans Gruber, one of the greatest villains of all time. He's right up there with Darth Vader. I'm not kidding. Find me a better villain and we could talk about it. This film set the pace for these types of films in the 90s going into it, and it was just action packed, and it was his bantering, his wittiness, and his I don't even care, dude. And he had the backdrop with his wife and the estranged marriage there going on, and him trying to save his family, and the entire movie he's running around barefoot. I mean, how dope is that? Plus you throw in the score with the Beethoven Ode to Joy at the end. It's nuts, dude. I watch this every Christmas because you know why? It is a Christmas film. Sorry. At number 51, Die Hard from 1988. At number 50, I'm going to bring you another controversial film, but I can easily back this one up. I don't care when the film was made, what type of film it is. If it scores high, it's going to go on this list. And this film here dots all the I's and crosses all the T's. It's called Zootopia. It came out in 2016. And this film is better than 90% of all the Pixar films. I'm not kidding. Well, mainly because Pixar hasn't been hitting them out the park recently. But this one nails it because they took some of the Pixar talent and brought them over. Jason Bateman and Jennifer Goodwin star, and Idris Elba is the African Buffalo police sergeant. He's also pretty cool. This film nails it on every single level. It's got a little SJW-ness in it, but I don't mind if you have something to say, because there do make some points here that is good and people should be mindful of, and it doesn't slam you in the face with it. It is a cool film that gets you thinking on that level, but also it's a film noir type of flick where it's a mystery and it keeps you guessing, and it's got a twist at the end. And that I will debate anybody on this film. If you just think it shouldn't be here, it scores high in all these categories. It grossed over $1 billion at the box office. It did it over the slow haul. It was a movie that stayed in the box office. It had staying power like crazy, and it deserves to be on this list. So number 50, Zootopia from 2016. So number 49, we have the first Frank Capra film on this list, and that is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, starring the immortal Jimmy Stewart. This film is about a local person who decides to go to Congress. He is a happy-go-lucky, he is a naive person who wants to do the right thing, and he realizes that, you know what, Washington is terrible and it's corrupt. And there's a swamp, even in 1939. And by the way, this year is one of the greatest film years in history, as you just go back and look at what films came out in that year. But this film is one of the best ones. And I tell you, it's emotional, it's good, and it's even more important if you watch it today, because it teaches you a little bit about how Congress works and how political infighting can happen, as we're seeing it right now in real time here in America. So with that, number 49 is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and it's from 1939. Number 48, we have LA Confidential. It comes to us from the year 1997. It stars Russell Crowe, Guy Pearce, Kevin Spacey, Danny DeVito, and many others. Oh, Kim Basinger, who won the Oscar for this role as the Best Supporting Actress. This film is a twisted film, and I mention this a lot, and I love film noir. This is a modern film noir without the narration overtones. It has some of that too, with Danny DeVito kind of talking over it, so there is that as well. But this film is a mystery spy thriller. It's intertwined, it's dark, it's gritty, it's violent, but it's very entertaining. The main characters are basically Guy Pearce, the goody two-shoes, who has a history in the police office through his legacy, through his family, his father, and so forth. And then you have Russell Crowe, who's like the bad guy, in terms of not bad, but he's just the tough guy. He's rough around the edges. He protects women. And those two are on a collision course to basically kill each other because they don't like each other for whatever reason. And so that is the main thing there. And you have Kevin Spacey playing a character who's working with Hollywood, producing a cop show. It's just all that going on. And you have Danny DeVito playing a tabloid author. And it's just gritty and twisted and all kind of stuff. And James Cromwell, I forgot to mention him, is also in this film. It is something to behold. I own this. I watch it about every 2 or 3 years. Wonderful film. 1997, LA Confidential, number 48. Number 47 is Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. Comes to us from the year 2003. I saw all 3 of these films in the theater. I'm not a big Lord of the Rings fan, nor The Hobbit or any of that. But this film was a culmination of the other 2. I enjoyed the first one, I guess, The Fellowship of the Ring, and I guess whatever. But this one was something different. It kind of brought it all together, and to me, it ranked so highly because of the technical merits of it and the fact that it held my attention. Because by then, I kind of knew who the characters were, and so this film, just on paper, is just sound. It won so many different Oscars. It won the Best Picture, and I think it was a reward for the other things that were happening with this film. Peter Jackson does a wonderful job directing this film. And yes, so this film, Return of the King, is definitely a good film. It deserves to be in this list, and it's number 47 from 2003. Number 46 is going to be a surprise to many people, but this film is phenomenal. I actually bought the DVD, so if I buy a DVD for a film, it's probably going to be on this list, especially if it ranks as highly as it does in these other categories. And this is from 2001. It's called Monsoon Wedding. It's from India, and this film is pretty cool because I can relate to it. It's about a dad who is trying to marry off his daughter and the pressures there are in doing that. And during this wedding, there's so many other undertones that are going on. I'm not going to spoil any of that for you, but it gets a little bit dark in some places, but it's charming. The music is phenomenal. It's colorful. The music is phenomenal. The soundtrack is actually amazing, and it's just great. The dancing, it's just a wonderful film. Again, it does have some serious points to it, but it is a powerful, moving, fun, energetic, and educational film because you learn a little bit about Indian culture and how it is to get married, what goes on, and what the values are there. So for number 46, Monsoon Wedding from 2001. Number 45 is Stand By Me. It's based on a book by Stephen King, actually a short story, and it's directed by Rob Reiner. It stars River Phoenix, Will Wheaton, Jerry O'Donnell. It has Corey Feldman. It has Richard Dreyfuss. It has Kiefer Sutherland, and it has a cameo of John Cusack as well as the brother that died, and it's causing the problems with the parents with the kid of Will Wheaton. And so it's a really powerful film about growing up. It's about exploring the woods at a time when they didn't have internet. It's a time when they could talk and banter to each other. And it was a time when it was of innocence. And River Phoenix plays the protected person over Will's character, who's a more of a naive character, and they look out for each other. It's an awesome film. It needs to be seen by many people. And so I love this film to death. It's number 45. It's Stand By Me. Check it out. It's a growing up piece, adolescent, and it comes to us from 1986. Check it out. At number 44 from 1940 comes a film that's as much fun as you can possibly have watching a movie, and that is if you can keep up with it, that is. It's called His Girl Friday. It stars Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell. And the main thing about this is that Cary Grant is a newspaper guy, and Rosalind's character is also a newspaper girl. She's an excellent reporter. She's about to get married and move off and leave the business. And Cary Grant, who used to be married to her, doesn't want her to leave, and he needs her to be his girl to take on a case that's happening in town that's of utmost importance. He needs his best person on the job, so he does whatever he can do to keep her from leaving town, from getting married. Definitely a love triangle, and it is just so fast-witted, paced. It is insane. Check this out. Within the first 20 minutes, you're like, your head spinning of the bantering. That's how things were done back then. It was dialogue driven. That was what it was. And it's so clever and funny and on point. It's a joy to watch. His Girl Friday from 1940 at number 44. Speaking of dialogue driven films, you can't get any more dialogue driven than our number 43 spot, 12 Angry Men, starring Henry Fonda. And I know Jack Klugman from The Odd Couple. He's one of the jurors as well. This film basically centers around a jury room, and for the entire length of the film, you're dealing with them discussing this case of a young 18-year-old who allegedly stabbed his father. And it's the persuasion of Henry Fonda's character and how he lets people understand that reasonable doubt means reasonable doubt, and he asks questions. And it's just a really good character study of people and what the motivations are. Is it justice, or is it a matter of me getting out of here so I can go home and watch TV? Literally, because what you see isn't always what is actually there. And so it is a really, really, really good microcosm on society. So 12 Angry Men is a fascinating movie to watch, and it's really fun. And my kids who are teenagers like this film as well. And so it just shows you that you don't need the special effects to make a movie work. And 12 Angry Men is a perfect example of that. So from 1957, number 43, 12 Angry Men. Number 42 is Gaslight. It comes to us from 1944. It stars Ingrid Bergman, Charles Boyer, and it has Joseph Cotton and a very young Angela Lansbury. Yes, this film was my introduction really to older films. My sister got me involved in this film, and I loved it from the day I saw it. Ingrid Bergman's playing a character who feels like she's going crazy. The gaslight in the house goes up and down, and she feels like she's tripping. And so it's a mystery behind where that's coming from, and it's a suspense. It's awesome. Check it out. 1944, our number 42 spot, Gaslight. If number 41 comes as a shocker to you, just think how I feel. I didn't know anything about this film until I saw it, but it's called A Very Long Engagement. At number 41, it's pretty high on this list. It comes to us from the year 2004. It's a French film, so it's got subtitles, but it's a World War I film. And actually, it's the third World War I film on this list. And essentially, it's about a woman who's looking for her fiance who may have been killed in World War I. And it's just a very long engagement. And so it's a journey to see what happens at the end of that road. So yes, this is a really, really excellent film. Good art direction and just good scenery. Everything's on par. And so I recommend this film. It surprised me. I'm sure it'll surprise you. At number 41, A Very Long Engagement from 2004. So at number 40 from the year 2000 is the Chris Nolan classic Memento. This is a film that's going to be studied in film schools for like forever. It stars Guy Pearce, who is a person who has lack of short-term memory. So he'll see something or experience something and then forget it 5 minutes later. And what the movie does, it puts you in his point of view by putting the movie in backwards chronologically. So the color frames are actually backwards. The movie plays backwards, and the black and white frames in the film, it goes back and forth, are going forward. So to kind of explain what happened. So it's a really interesting way of doing it. You can actually take the film and re-edit it. And there is a version of that where it all plays together, but it's not nearly as exciting because it's tense, because you don't know what's happening before, but you know something happened because he woke up with a scar on his face. So he'll take a picture of himself or take a picture with a Polaroid, or if it's important enough, he will tattoo himself, leave himself a note, a memento, to try and solve a murder. It's really fascinating. It's genius. Chris Nolan, you are amazing. So check it out. It's number 40 from 2000, Memento. So number 39 we have, which is probably one of my most favorite. Let's stop lying. This is my most favorite film noir flick, and that is The Big Sleep from 1946. It stars Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall. They eventually get married. This film is phenomenal. The thing about this is the convoluted nature of the plot. It's based on a book, and even that is crazy. This film, you have to really be on your toes to figure out what's going on, but it's all about Bogey and Bacall. It's all about them. Bogey plays Marlowe, a detective who goes to a mansion of an ex-general military to find out that he wants him to find somebody, but then Vivian, who's played by Lauren Bacall, says no, he really wants you to find his protege, Sean, and it goes from there. It goes on, and the ending of this reminds me a little bit of LA Confidential. They're holed up in a room, and it's just classy. It's just top shelf stuff. It is what Hollywood was meant to be and what it should go back to. This is dynamite on film. It's The Big Sleep from 1946, and it sits at number 39. At number 38, we have the classic 1922 documentary Nanook of the North. It's a documentary that's a silent film. It's pretty cool. I mean, it teaches you about Eskimos and how they live, and it shows him even building an igloo. Way cool. And you also be amazed at how many people you can fit in a canoe. This film is something you should watch. It's on YouTube for free. I would say check it out. It's high on this list because it's so fascinating, and it's just a classic piece of filmmaking, even at that level of technology. So at number 38, Nanook of the North from 1922. So number 37, we have Pulp Fiction. It's from 1994. Like I said, that's a really big year. It stars John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman, Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Amanda Plummer, Quentin Tarantino. It has Christopher Walken, Bruce Willis. This film is crammed with talent, Ving Rhames, and it's basically intertwined stories of the characters of John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson. And it involves around that, and you just kind of watch it. It goes back and forth through time. Witty comedy. It's off the cuff. It's politically incorrect. It's violent. It's funny. It's hysterical. It's a black comedy at times. And at times you'll know what it is, but it is very much entertaining. Pulp Fiction is a film that filmmakers sort of just have to study because this is a film that's unlike what's ever been done up to that time. Quentin Tarantino is definitely one of a kind, and this is his masterpiece, and I don't think he'll ever do anything quite to this level, even though he's made some pretty good films past that. So with that, number 37 is Pulp Fiction from 1994. Number 36 is The Thief of Baghdad. It comes to us from the year 1924. It's the masterpiece of Douglas Fairbanks, and you get to see his athleticism in this film and his physique. It's incredible. This film, if you are cynical about silent films, I would say watch this because I think you would be shocked to see what you see in this film. The set design, the cast, everything, the costumes is of a top level. I mean, for that time, of course. I mean, we're not talking about, Star Wars here, but we're talking about special effects that look fairly convincing, flying carpets, monsters, and all that stuff. And just athleticism, again, from the lead actor. It's just a really, really, really fun ride. It's about a guy who's the thief. He falls in love with the daughter of a caliphate. And yeah, so it's about that. And it's just swashbuckling and swordplay and all this. And again, the special effects will throw you for a loop, and it's just a fun ride. I was in awe of this film. It's a masterpiece on many different levels. So A Thief of Baghdad from 1924 is number 36. So number 35 is Hoop Dreams. It comes to us in the year 1994. It's a documentary, which is only meant to be a 30-minute short, but ended up being a 5-year expose of two young black players, William Gates and Arthur Agee. And it follows these two players. They have two different styles and two different backgrounds. And you get to see them off the cuff on the court and what's going on in their personal lives. And you realize really quickly that making the NBA is a big deal and it's tough. And most of it has nothing to do with basketball. It has to do with extracurricular activities, injuries, girls, anything, influence around you, people. That's the big thing that keeps people from going to the NBA who have talent. And this film really shows how difficult it is to go there. Watch for some cameos of NBA players that made it. It's an old film, so most of the players that you see are now retired now, but it is an interesting expose of these two young men, and it's a long film, but definitely worth watching. It is a film that was one of only two films at that time to be nominated for a Best Editing for the Academy Award, Woodstock being the other. So at number 35 is Hoop Dreams from 1994. So number 34, we have Citizen Kane, comes to us from 1941. And I'm sure you all heard that this is the greatest film of all time. And that may be true from a technical standpoint, but let's face it, it's not the most fun film to watch. Now, as I know about film and the history of it and how this came to fruition and the things that Orson Welles, who wrote this and directed it, did, he revolutionized the industry. I get that. You watch the pan shots coming in and all that stuff was revolutionary. And it's a masterpiece from a technical standpoint and even from acting for the most part. But it just isn't a narrative that I really want to go back to watch. Now, if you're a film student or whatever, you have to study this film. That's it. So that's why it's pretty high on my list in terms of, not being, near the top 10. Because when I saw this the first time, I was like, well, this obviously is going to be the best film of all time. I just didn't really enjoy the film. But however, it does rank highly in my scoring. It just does, because it is a masterpiece and you can't deny that. If you know anything about film, that's what it is. Problem with Orson Welles is that this was an attack against William Randolph Hearst, an actual person, and he pretty much destroyed his career before it even got started. So that's the real tragedy in this, is that Orson Welles was not able to make more films without being blacklisted in Hollywood. And so, but at number 34, you have Citizen Kane, and it comes to us from the year 1941. Number 33 is Aliens. This is James Cameron really showing it right here, because he took Ridley Scott's original Alien, which was a really good movie, but more of a horror film, and made it into an action adventure phenomenon. Aliens is just nuts. And if you have not seen this, you have to see it. It's the best that you will ever see. It is just that good. Sigourney Weaver becomes an action hero, and she's reluctant because she doesn't want to have to go back to the planet which terrorized the first ship that she was on. And so this movie deals with these ultra gung-ho Marines who are going in there, going to take names and kick butt and all this. And of course, it doesn't happen like they want it to happen. They're trying to do these things, but then you have a person named Newt, a little girl who is actually someone that Sigourney Weaver wants to protect. And that's kind of the human MacGuffin in this. And it's just powerful usage. And it's just non-stop action, and Paul Reiser is in it as well. And I tell you, this, I can't say enough about this film. And so Aliens comes to us from 1986. It's legendary. You gotta check this movie out, and I may watch it again pretty soon. Oh, and watch out for the Bill Paxton one-liners and zingers. Game over, man. It's awesome. Check it out. At number 32, we have Steven Spielberg's masterpiece, E.T. the Extraterrestrial. And it's interesting that we come off the heels of Aliens, because what made this movie so popular, it stayed at number one at the box office for I'm sure over a decade. I think Titanic was the one that knocked it off. But this film was a blockbuster of epic proportion. It was transcending culture. It was a phenomenon. Reese's Pieces was the winner here because M&M's decided not to cash in on that because they said, you know what, we're not going to associate ourselves with this movie. And Reese's Pieces said, we'll do it. And then it made them just blow up. And one thing that made this so popular on the heels of Aliens and other movies like that is that this is the first movie that I can recall or know of, maybe the Earth stood still, maybe, where the alien was actually a good person. Most aliens in movies were like these evil things that are trying to kill you. This one was E.T. trying to go home, trying to phone home, and a little boy trying to help him. And that was the crux of this story, is Elliot himself. And that's what endears you to this creature because that creature meant so much to him. And so he's also a person who doesn't have his father and this and that. And so all that ties in. Steven Spielberg does his thing in this film. He really gets it done with the music. John Williams, it's just phenomenal. I love it. And so it's number 32. It comes to us from 1982. It's E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Number 31 comes to us from 2002. It's called City of God. It's a film that's subtitled and from Brazil, which is why I would pick this film over anyone on this list for someone to see who hasn't seen anything on this list, because it will open so many doors for someone who is cynical about foreign films and subtitles and all that kind of stuff. And it just is amazing. You are not going to expect what's going to happen. It's dealing with a young boy who is trying to be a photographer. He's seeing it. You're seeing the film through his eyes, and he's seeing gang warfare going on. And it's a subplot. It goes in and out through time, and it's based loosely on a true story. And so it is incredible. So check this film out. It's called City of God, number 31. I can't say highly enough how amazing this film is. It's tragic, it's violent, it's fun, and it is very much entertaining, and it will surprise you. At number 30, we have Breakfast at Tiffany's, the first Audrey Hepburn film on my list. And this is one of my favorite ones by her. And the opening scene of this film came out in 1961. It's in New York, and there's no cars on the street, and she's walking down, and she gets in front of Tiffany's. I believe a cab drops her off, and she has a donut, and she's eating her breakfast in front of the Tiffany's window. She's window shopping, and it just speaks to her aspirations for greatness. And you know, this is based on a Truman Capote novelette, and she is essentially a call girl, but they don't mention that in the movie, of course. But in the book, it has that in there. And so you have George Peppard is a suitor of hers, and I guess he's living next to her, and they have a budding relationship. But, you know, Audrey Hepburn's character is just not wanting to tie herself down. She's got this cat, and she's free-spirited and whatever, and she just doesn't want to tie herself down to anything. And so it's like George is trying to get with her and so forth, and it just isn't happening. And that's the underlying thing of this film. It's through her, and it's trying to get out of her lifestyle and then get into something more stable. And she wants something better for herself, but can she get outside of herself to do that? And that's the core message of this film. And at the end, of course, I won't spoil anything. It's obviously the best part of this film. And that pretty much surprised me too, because I wasn't expecting that sort of an ending. If you're a romance person, this movie is absolutely for you. If you're an Audrey Hepburn fan, this movie is definitely for you. It's number 30. It's Breakfast at Tiffany's from 1961. Okay, I can totally explain this one. Avengers Endgame is our number 29 film, and a couple reasons why it ranks this high. I think the main reason is because I rated this film right after seeing it. I had a review for that, a non-spoiler review, after watching this film, like right after it. I mean, I literally reviewed this film like 30 minutes after seeing it, so that's probably one thing. But the reason why I'm okay with keeping it on this list is because this is a accumulation of all of the Marvel storylines. It needs to be merited, and it needs to be rewarded for that. And so to me, I am taking all the Marvel Universe films, from the Iron Mans to the Thors to the Captain Americas, you know, even the Incredible Hulk film I thought was better than most people would give credit for. All of that, Guardians of the Galaxy, the whole nine, into this one film. So I think it earns its spot here because it totally stuck the landing. They took chances in this film and did things that I wasn't thinking they were going to do. And at the end of the movie, no one moved. It was powerful. And I get the thing on its merits. Okay, this film isn't on its merits the best film in the series. I would agree with that 100%. So I am basically putting it here because of the score I gave it, but also because of what it represents. It represents the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, ending all 4 phases, and that's where it is. And I think that alone, because it stuck the landing, that deserves this spot as high as it is. And I only have a couple comic book films on my list, and this one I think represents all of those together collectively, at least on the Marvel side. And so with that, number 29 is Avengers Endgame from 2019. At number 28, we're back with the Steven Spielberg classic. This may be his best film to date. It's called Schindler's List, based on the true story of the German man who decided to take it on himself to save the lives of countless number of Jewish people during the Holocaust. He had a factory and was able to do things that most people couldn't. And he is an honored hero in the Jewish faith. And Liam Neeson plays that character. And all I have to say about this is it's shocking, it's sad, and it's extremely emotional, especially at the end. I won't say what it is. I think you know what I'm talking about. This thing that Liam Neeson says at the end. Schindler's List, it won Best Picture, deservedly so, and Steven Spielberg finally got his Oscar, deservedly so, after being snubbed for so many years, but they couldn't ignore him on this one. So 28 is Schindler's List, and it comes to us from 1993, and it's number 28. At number 27, we have Glory. It comes to us the year 1989. It stars Matthew Broderick, Morgan Freeman, and Denzel Washington. He got an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor here. And this film is a Civil War piece. It's a true story about the 54th Massachusetts Colored Regiment and their quest to become one with this country. Of course, because Black Americans, half the country was still enslaved, and they just wanted to make a place for themselves, and they wanted to fight for the freedom of this country. And that's what this story is all about. They all come from different walks of life. Some were rich, some were poor, but they were all Black, and they all wanted to fight and do something special. And Matthew Broderick also came from affluence, and he decided to also do this as well. And it's just about sacrifice. It's compelling, and it doesn't talk about William Carney, but he is the first African American to win the Medal of Honor. He won it at the Battle of Fort Wagner, the end scene of this film, and I actually had a documentary on that. I'll leave a link in the description below. You can check that out. We did that in-house a year and a half ago, and just as a side piece there. But just to let you know, this film is, where to begin? It's just really, really good. It doesn't ever let up. I'm a Civil War guy myself. I give tours of Gettysburg, so I appreciate this at a level that most people probably wouldn't get. But yeah, it is phenomenal. I could watch it anytime. And really, if you had your DVD, get your DVD because it's got a picture-in-picture way of doing the commentary. That's the most unique way of doing it that I've seen. But if you can find the DVD version of that, go grab that and watch it that way. Okay, and that is number 27 on my list. It's called Glory from 1989. At number 26 is Star Wars from 1977. And if you don't know by now, you see Darth Vader hanging up on my microphone here. I'm a Star Wars guy. Let's just face it. I'm not going to say too much about this other than it's awesome. And despite what Disney's done with it, it's still awesome. They can't take away the originals. You know the story. There's nothing I can't say about this film that hasn't already been said. So to save time in the video, I'm going to cut this short. But Star Wars is number 26 on my list. And, well, let me say a little bit more about it. It's a story of a guy who's basically aspiring to be more. And you see as he's on the Tatooine planet looking up at the twin suns, he wants more. And that's what this is all about. It's a soldier's story. It's a hero's journey. It's a quest. And it's got mythology ties to it. So it's stories we all know about, tropes, whatever, brought into a Western scientific type of setting. And that's Star Wars. Carrie Fisher, Han Solo, and Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford, Chewbacca, R2-D2, C-3PO, all of these people and the characters really just make this film what it is. It's special. And I have to give credit to George Lucas' wife for making this thing happen because the editing was a mess. She helped put it together at the last minute because otherwise it probably been a total flop. So George Lucas' wife was the one that actually made this what it is. Otherwise, we probably never got the next movie. So with that, Star Wars 26, 1977, it is phenomenal. So keeping on the same note of science fiction minus the fiction is The Right Stuff. It comes at number 25 from 1983, and it's about the Mercury program, NASA's attempt for manned space travel. It just deals with Gus Grissom and John Glenn and Alan Shepard and Chuck Yeager and what it took to do that, hence the name The Right Stuff. And these men were brave. They were a little bit loco in some ways, but I'm glad they did it because we would never have gone to the moon without people like this. NASA didn't know what to do. They got test pilots, people who were just on the outer edge of sanity, but they were also physically able and mentally able and just brave, and that is what it took. So The Right Stuff is a great film. It's a good companion piece for many time period pieces of this era as well, and so for that I highly recommend it. It was really highly acclaimed when it came out. So 1983, The Right Stuff at number 25. Number 24, some people consider this the greatest sequel of all time. I would say you probably have a strong case there, and I might even agree with you. This is The Godfather Part 2. It is the follow-up to The Godfather, which won Best Picture. Oh, by the way, this also won Best Picture. So this deals with the parallel story of Vito Corleone, which is played by Robert De Niro, and Al Pacino, which is the current Don in the Corleone family, and they're basically on separate paths. So you get to see more or less a prequel with the Robert De Niro character, Vito Corleone, which is the Marlon Brando character from the first Godfather, and Al Pacino moving forward with the struggles with his wife and with Fredo, who's his brother. And it is a masterpiece. Of course, I liked it, but I liked the first one a little bit better for different reasons. But this is a different film altogether. It's not even related, in my opinion. It is a separate film, which is why I like this sequel. A sequel needs to be good, needs to be separate from the original, because you have to distance yourself or take it to another level or elevate it. I think this film does that. So The Godfather Part 2 at number 24 is a classic. Francis Ford Coppola does a number on this one. Back-to-back Oscars, you can't go wrong with that. 1974, The Godfather Part 2. So not surprisingly, when we get into the 20s, we have another Alfred Hitchcock film, and this is one of his best ones. It stars Joan Fontaine, Judith Anderson, and Laurence Olivier. And it's about a woman who marries a widower who is still obsessed with his dead wife. This comes at number 23 and is called Rebecca. And this is Hitchcock at his finest, and it's early in his career. And it just shows you how he's able to twist things and make it seem so eerie. I mean, Judith Anderson is really creepy in this movie. And so just check this thing out and you'll see why I have it rated so high. This, along with Gaslight, are the two films that really started me off a while back in these older films and being able to appreciate what I was watching. And so as I revisited it many years later, it just gave me a greater appreciation of what was going on. And Hitchcock is one of my favorite directors of all time. So number 23 is Rebecca from 1940. Number 22 is Orphans of the Storm. It's from 1921. It's a silent film, and it stars the Gish sisters, Dorothy and Lillian. And they play two characters, Henriette and Louise. Louise is blind, and Henriette says she wants to get a cure for her sister's blindness because she wants to get married and she wants her sister to be able to see her. So long story short, they get separated. One goes into slavery, into begging, one goes into prison, and they just separate most of the film. And they have their little misadventures, and it becomes really crazy. It's set in France around the French Revolution, prior to that, and after that, and during that. So we get to see the French Revolution actually happening. And so D.W. Griffin, who's the same guy who did Intolerance and Broken Blossoms and a few other films, he's a famous director of that era. This is one of the films that he did that didn't be as successful as the other ones, but to me, this is probably one of his best ones, in my opinion. I've seen all the major ones. And so, but this particular one is a melodramatic piece. And at the end, of course, it has an over-the-top happy ending. But there's some serious stakes to this film. And there's a big chase scene at the end. It really elevates. And it's a piece that I wouldn't expect to be this old, to be this dramatic and this powerful. But it was. It gets you wrapped up in it. Once you understand the characters, what the motivations are, it really pulls you. And these old films do that. They just over the top, melodramatic, and it's like, because they're not talking, so they're expressing themselves in a much more anguish and overstated expressions, and that just kind of gets you going too. So anyway, and use your imagination as well, because there's the subtitles only come through every so often, so you kind of have to imply what they're saying and feel. So it's almost like reading a book in some ways. So this film is really, really good. It's hard to find a good copy of it, but it's on YouTube. You can watch it for free, and it comes to us at number 22. It's called Orphans of the Storm, and it's from 1921. Christmas Story is a movie that I think gets a bad rap because it's got so many one-liners and zingers and you shoot your eye out and all of that stuff that it just gets buried down, and people are cynical about this movie. They say, whatever. But at number 21, from 1983, Bob Clark directed this. It is an absolute classic. And I think if you strip away all of the skits, because really it's a number of skits back to back to back from scene to scene to scene, and they're all very funny. There is no bad scene. I think we can all agree with that. But at the end of the day, Christmas Story has heart. And if you really want to get deep into it, you look at it through the eyes of Ralphie, and we all were kids once, and we all wanted that one gift. And that's what it taps into. The magic of a kid trying to get what he wants and hoping that Santa Claus can get it for him if his parents can't do it. And you see the scene when his dad, kind of yells at him when he's, messes up with the car nuts on the changing a tire. You can just sense that there's some tension between him and his dad, and the mom just wants to protect him. So you have all these motivations. And so when the dad comes in at the end and gives him the gun, it almost validates Ralphie. And it's a special movie that I think people just lose in all of the hoopla. The last scene when they're at the Christmas tree, it's all lit up and it's night and it's snowing. It's a beautiful picture. It's just the dad and the mom and the kids are asleep. That's a special moment that even when the movie is playing and all these skits are happening, I know that scene's coming toward the end. So no matter what, that to me is really the best part of the film, because that's the essence of it, that the family loves each other and they're there for each other, and that Ralphie ultimately got the gift he wanted because his parents absolutely love him. And the dad said, you know what, aside from that, we're gonna get you this gun. And mom's like, well, don't shoot your eye out. And it's heartwarming, and it's just a special film. I hope people can see it for that and not just look at the tropes and everything else, which is great, but it's much more than that. So 21, A Christmas Story, one of the greatest of all time, and it comes to us from 1983. At number 20 is a special film. It's called Apollo 11, and I'm not going to really review this because I have a review on my channel. I will leave a link to all the films that are reviewed in this list in my description here below. But just to let you know, this is actual footage from NASA that they kept in the vault for many years and released it on the anniversary. And so this film is just amazing. I mean, I just was jaw dropped what I was looking at. The quality of the footage is just like opening up a time capsule. So check out that review, number 20, Apollo 11 from 2019. So at number 19 is Toy Story, a film that I've seen probably more times than anyone on this list because I have kids and they love this film. It brings back a lot of good memories because when they're little, you're watching this and you watch it again, you realize where you were when they were watching it. And this is a timeline epic because it goes into the kid as he grows older into the other films, but it all starts here. The concept of Buzz Lightyear, Tim Allen's character, who is not sentient, but finds out that he is a toy and not a real astronaut or spaceman, is traumatic. And I think they do a good job of that. And Tom Hanks' character, Woody, also has a good arc in there as well. His jealousy of Buzz. And then, of course, you have kids who want to know what happens to their toys. Well, when you're not there, they walk away if you lose your toys. And so it's just a really, really good story, concept, and Pixar really did a number. And it's probably the greatest film that they've done. And there's other films I enjoy as well, but there's nothing like seeing this film for the first time, and especially seeing it through your children's eyes. So number 19, Toy Story from Pixar. It comes at a year of 1995. So number 18 from 1952 is Singing in the Rain, starring Gene Kelly, Donald Connor, and Debbie Reynolds. And this film is one that I like a whole bunch because the musical numbers are insane. The dancing is freaking amazing. Donald O'Connor is a legend. What he does on camera is ridiculous. And if you understand what Debbie Reynolds had to do to get up to speed, you would be amazed. She didn't really know how to dance like that. So she actually had to learn. She was so young when she got this role. She said it was the hardest thing she ever had to do other than being a parent. And of course, we know she was the mother of Carrie Fisher. And so there's a special place in my heart on that. But this movie is a great musical across the board. It deals with silent films and going from that era into talkies and dealing with a person who can't talk because she has a high-pitched voice, and how they're going to suppress that and deal with that. And so it's a kind of a comedy as well. But the musical numbers would set this thing apart. Gene Kelly is amazing. Of course, the classic scene, Singing in the Rain, is what it is. But there's other scenes too that are just leave you just amazed at what they could do on camera. 1952 brought us a classic. Number 18, Singing in the Rain. So coming to you at number 17 is The Wizard of Oz. It's a film that growing up, we watched this every year as a family, and it would scare me every year with the family. But it's a really, really good film, and it's a film that I think most people don't take seriously because they look at it as a child's film. But if you look at it again, you strip away all that stuff, you see a film that has a really good message. It is very, very much a watchable film because you're following Dorothy, her aspirations, and the path that they're going on with the lion and the scarecrow and the Tin Man. They are really good camaraderie. And then you have this evil witch who is a really, really good antagonist. And then of course you have the monkeys and all that. And it just has a lot going for it. It's just an adventure. And it's a film that I think people can appreciate as kids, but also appreciate as they get older, as they realize what this film is really saying to us. And so with that, The Wizard of Oz, not much more to say more about that, but it's at 17. It's from that year, 1939, the greatest year in Hollywood history, 1939, The Wizard of Oz. This is a film that you're not ready for. I wasn't ready for it. It's number 16, Das Boot, or The Boat. It's a German film, and it's about the U-boats of World War II and what these guys had to go through. And, this thing is intense, man. And I was not ready for this at all. But when this thing came out, I remember the critics saying, oh my goodness, this film is crazy good. And I sat down and watched it. It's very long, but the payoff on this thing is there, and you would not be let down by this. Just one scene that I'm thinking about right now, it just gives me chills. And so Das Boot is that film, and I can't stress it enough. Check this thing out from 1981. It sits number 16 on my list. Well deserved. Das Boot. Okay, so for me, Gone with the Wind was a film that I wasn't looking forward to see because I thought it was just long and drawn out, and it just had that one line, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. I thought that's all this film was, maybe a burning of Atlanta. But I didn't relate that to the Civil War, but just what this is. It's basically about the burning of Atlanta. That's part of it. I mean, it's really about Vivian Leigh and Scarlett. It's all about Scarlett. And it wasn't until I saw it, because I was going through my 1001 movies you must see before you die. I was just watching movies. I didn't care what it was, just to get to the list. And this one, I was like, man, I see why this movie is so loved. I mean, this is like the greatest blockbuster of all time. If you adjust for inflation, it's not even close. It's not even close. I mean, Avengers, Endgame, it's not even close. I mean, this is like, it's insane how much money this thing made. And watching it, I'm like, you know what? Okay, this is a great film. And not only do you have these huge set pieces, these wide angle shots and these huge casts, because there's no CG, these are real people, right? This isn't duplication by computer animation. No, this is real people and it's real stuff going on here. And so for me, what really made it enjoyable for me is basically seeing it through Vivien Leigh's eyes, Scarlett. Even though she was a person that you don't like, she's not really likable, but you can't take your eyes off of her because you understand her motivations and you just, okay, girl, I get it. You do you, girl. And that's what I was saying the whole time. And so when Clark Gable disses her at the end, you're like, oh, okay, well, yeah. You see why people were like, wow, that's shocked by that. And so it stars, again, Vivien Leigh, Clark Gable, Olivia de Havilland, and it gave the first African-American, the first black woman an Oscar as well. And there's some controversy behind that, but she played really well in this movie. And it's just a beautiful film. It has an overture, it has an intermission. It's like totally an event. So Gone with the Wind, it deserves all of it. As a Civil War guy as well, I also appreciate that about it. But there's other undertones in this story too that go without saying. And so Gone with the Wind is just beyond that one note that you think it might be. It's a classic film and it deserves all the accolades it has gotten. So at number 15, Gone with the Wind from 1939, that year, I said again, the greatest one of all time. At number 14, I can see how many people would say this is a head scratcher for them, and I totally get that. I get people who don't like this film, but number 14 for me is Lost in Translation. For me personally, my sensibilities, it just hits on all the notes. I mean, Bill Murray, number one, he is awesome, and the role he played in this was great. The daughter of Francis Ford Coppola directed it. I'm a big Godfather fan, so you got that. Scarlett Johansson is a new character at the time, but she played an excellent role, and it's a isolated piece. I like films that are sort of out in remote locations where you're kind of trapped, kind of like The Black Narcissus and Only Angels Have Wings, which didn't make this list, but that could have probably made it. And, Casablanca and movies such as that where you're kind of just isolated, and this movie does that. And it's a budding friendship between two people who meet in happenstance. They never introduce themselves to each other, and it's not romantic, but it is sort of like platonic romantic. And it is a film that is just touches on all these different things. It's quirky, and it's just for me, it's just fantastic. And I'm glad I'm not the only person that feels this way. When I first saw it, I wasn't really feeling it, but then there was a scene that happened in the film that I get it now. Once you understand where the director's going with it, then you can kind of see what they're trying to do. It's kind of like with Eyes Wide Shut, the Stanley Kubrick film. When I finally figured out what he was going at, I was like, man, this film is a masterpiece. And I actually should have rated that film. It probably would have fit in this list somewhere. But this is such a hard list to get in. This top 100 is tight. So anyway, Lost in Translation is number 14. I'm not going to make any apologies for this. I understand where you may come from. If you hate this film, that's great. Similar to Moulin Rouge, I get it. But for me, it's a great film and I love it. So number 14 is Lost in Translation from 2003. At number 13 is Beauty and the Beast from 1991. It, to me, is Disney's greatest animated film, and to me, it's not even close. It is a film that is the first film to actually get a nomination for Best Picture. It's hand-drawn animation, and this is when they only had 5 nominees. This film had all of that, and from the opening note from this film, from the opening scene where Belle is singing, and it carries that song all the way through, you understand where she's going, what her motivations are, who is the person who's going to be the problem, and all that. You're jumping into the story with like 10 minutes, you know everything we need to go, and then it takes you on an arc which is believable. And they don't just make them together, they don't force it together, they put it in a way that makes it believable based on who she is as a person. And so yeah, Beauty and the Beast is an ultimate classic, and my kids love it, and I would keep it at 13 all day, any day of the week. And it's from 1991, Beauty and the Beast. The Princess Bride, say, even though it's pretty high where it is now, I can see me putting this even higher over the years. The film that's number one wasn't number one 5 years ago. I moved it up within the past 2 or 3 years because I rewatched it and thought about some things. So this one can easily be moved up. And that's the good thing about this list. Things can go up and down based on what's going on. But The Princess Bride is, I mean, if you haven't seen it, I mean, come on. I mean, whatever. I mean, this film is just near perfection. Rob Reiner is just brilliant in this direction. It's based on a children's novel that he adapted to the movie. And it took a long time to come to film. But I mean, he did it in a masterful job, and it basically is part of American culture, this film, and so that's why to me it's so great. And you know, my wife loves this film, and there's nothing wrong with this film. In fact, it's perfect in almost every area. It just lacks in some things in terms of this story isn't the greatest, but I mean, just in terms of it being the depth of it, it's pretty cookie cutter. But everything else, I mean, it is just phenomenal. And it has so many one-liners and whatever. You never get bored. The thing just flies through. It does have some contrast. It just has some tragedy in it as well. And it isn't just a happy-go-lucky time. It does have some things where the characters have to struggle. And so that, again, makes this film such a dynamic film and a film that's timeless. And so with that, The Princess Bride at number 12, excellent, from 1987. So at number 11, we have 12 Years a Slave. This is an amazing film for several reasons. One, because watching it is like torture almost, and I'm not trying to degrade the people who actually had to go through this, but this is a very, very difficult film to watch. I mean, it is in your face and it doesn't let up. I mean, and I'm sure it was probably even worse than that. We're dealing with the issue of slavery in the Deep South, Louisiana particularly. But this guy, Solomon Northup, was a well-to-do black man up north and was basically kidnapped and sold into slavery. And you watch his lifestyle prior to that. He's married and all this, and he's doing well. He gets tricked into the slave trade, and then he is basically sent off for 12 years. And he wrote this memoir that was just happenstance found by somebody, and Steve McQueen got the rights, or whomever, Brad Pitt, the producing company, got the rights to this film and put it to film. And it is incredible. Fortunately, things do work out in the end, but only for him. And you still think about the people that were left behind because of the fact that, you know, you get to know these people. And Lupita Nyong'o is in this as well, and she does a fantastic job. And I tell you, thinking about this film is just, woof. It should be seen, and I get it if you don't want to see it, but it is phenomenal on so many different levels outside of the fact of the subject matter, but just the lighting of it, the contrast between the beautiful scenery of where they are based on the horrible stuff that's going on. I keep thinking, wow, this is a beautiful place. Oh yeah, by the way, this guy's hanging from a tree. So yeah, so anyway, there is that. So number 11, we have 12 Years a Slave. If you want to watch it, I recommend it highly, and let me know if you like it in the comments below and what your thoughts are. So from 1946, we have our number 10 film, The Best Years of Our Lives, starring Myrna Lloyd. And I must say, it also stars a guy named Harold Russell, who is missing his limbs. And he's playing a veteran who's come back from war, who has to adapt to this. He lost his limbs on a boat. It was burns. And this is a real actor who played this, so there wasn't anything fake about it. And so that makes this even more touching when there's a scene that you'll see. When you see it, you'll know what I'm talking about, which basically got me going to Amazon and buying the DVD for this film because it's such a fantastic film. It's a William Wyler film. As you know, he pushes those boundaries. This film is probably his best one. It comes to us from 1946. Again, it's Best Years of Our Lives, and it deals with dealing with coming back from war and the post-traumatic effects that happen from that. And it's a real story. It doesn't hide anything, and it really hits you right in the chest with it. And it's great. It's fantastic. So number 10, The Best Years of Our Lives from 1946. The Empire Strikes Back. How could Star Wars follow up that movie? This movie, The Empire Strikes Back, by most people say that this is the best of all the Star Wars films. And I would absolutely have to agree with that. This comes to us at number 9. It's from 1980, and it takes the franchise in a whole nother direction. There's a lot more money thrown at it, and you have a different director added is, it's not George Lucas, and so he can focus on other things. And that new direction takes it in a place that I don't think George would have taken it. And it's darker, it's grittier, it's a cliffhanger. It is Hollywood history. And I remember seeing this film in the theater, and it was just, it's just top of the shelf, right? And so, yeah, The Empire Strikes Back is number 9 on my list. Absolutely love it. I think Darth Vader here agrees with it, and it comes to us from 1980. At number 8, we have Joker. And like I said before, I don't care when a movie comes out. I don't care what type of movie it is. If it's good and if it ranks high, it's going to be on my list. And Joker just came out. It grossed $1 billion against enormous odds. I have a review on this. I'll leave a link in the description. I'm not going to cover this a lot, but I will say I was absolutely right. I covered this movie right when it came out, before anyone was talking about it like that this movie was a classic that would be talked about for decades later. And I was dead on, right on that. And I'm proud of it. And it's going to be here at number 8 strong because it is that film. Joaquin Phoenix won the Best Actor award, which I was shocked he did because I didn't think that Hollywood was going to give it to him, but they did. And it was well deserved. And in that review, I explain all that. So with no further ado, number 8 is Joker from 2019. Number 7, we bring you another Alfred Hitchcock film, and this one is North by Northwest with Cary Grant, and it stars Eva Marie Saint as well. And this film is a film about mistaken identity. They think he has some microfilm and he's smuggling it out of the country, and the chase is on. And this film is so cool. It reminds me of just the 90s and 80s kind of thrillers where they're going after you and it's a chase, whatever. But this is done at an earlier time, and it's just strange to see this type of level of story, and it just is done so well. It's almost as if it's a prototype for what came later. It's almost as if this movie is the one that kind of started it, because in my watching of these films, I haven't seen a film quite like this prior to that. Maybe there is. If it is, it's probably one that Hitchcock did, but he absolutely masters the suspense in this movie, and I definitely think you will like it. The end scene is just epic, classic at Mount Rushmore. I'll leave it at that. So check out North by Northwest. It's number 7 on my list, and it's from 1959. Okay, It's a Wonderful Life comes to it at number 6. It's from 1946. It's a Frank Capra film, one of my favorite directors. It stars Jimmy Stewart, and it's a film that, it's a film that I watch every Christmas Eve, and it's a film that unfortunately probably won't ever get any higher because I don't believe the story depth really takes it any further, but it's maxed out in all the other categories, so it's going to be in the top 10 of my list for the foreseeable future. It's a Wonderful Life. Just not much to say about it. It's about a guy who just feels like he isn't getting a break, that he's always doing stuff for other people, and he can never seem to get his goals to travel the world and do this. He's always being pulled back in, either because of his brother going to war, have to help out his dad, or because of whatever is going on. He just can't do it. And you have a guy named Potter who is running the show in the town, and he's just trying to fight against that and trying to help his dad. And we know the story. And so it's just a film that is just classic. It's emotional every single time because of the heart it is, that the things that he does pays back in the end. And he's a good person, and he has a wonderful life. And so at number 6, It's a Wonderful Life, a timeless classic from 1946. In my opinion, City Lights is Charlie Chaplin's greatest film. I mentioned this before with The Gold Rush, that there was a better film. This is that film. When I first saw it, I was just captivated because it was already good, and then the ending was just made it just like classic. The ending of this film is just amazing. I'll leave it at that. Of course, you have the skits and the physical comedy of Charlie Chaplin, his genius, and this film is set apart from that. What's interesting about this film is this came out at a time in 1931 when silent film was already dying or dead. There were already films with talking, but he decided to do this one anyway, keep it silent, so which is interesting, and it still holds its own. It's number 5. It's called City Lights, and I recommend you checking it out. It's from 1931. So before we talked about Godfather Part 2, I said that I felt that The Godfather was a better film for different reasons. The different reasons for me, and this falls at number 4, this film came out in 1972, it won Best Picture, is that at the core of The Godfather story is family. And this film does family better. And that's why this film is better than The Godfather Part 2. And that's why I would say that this film is the greatest film. Well, it's been the greatest film of all time for me for a long time, but it got bumped down by the films above it. This is actually in a tie for first, really. Well, actually it's tied for second. And we had to do some tiebreakers here. The older film won out, but you'll see that in a second. So The Godfather starts off with a wedding. It goes on for like 15, 20 minutes. And you wonder, why are you doing this wedding? It's so that they can establish the fact that it's about family. It ends with a christening. And while he's, of course, doing his, taking out the trash at the end, it starts with a wedding. It ends with a christening. It is a masterpiece on so many different levels. You could talk about this film. You could talk about how Sonny was the person who the dad wanted to become the new Don. When something happens, of course, you probably know the film. I'm probably giving spoilers here. It falls to Michael Corleone, who, by the way, the studio didn't want, but he had to actually get in there because they gave him some dailies of the scene in the restaurant, which kept him on board. But Al Pacino ended up keeping that role, and he became Michael Corleone, and that wasn't his father's wishes. And so it's just a powerful film. When you see Vito see his son laying there after being totally ripped apart, and his facial expression, it's about family, and that's why The Godfather is better than Part 2, and that's why The Godfather is a legendary film, and I think it doesn't get enough credit. It's a film that I just totally love, and the more I think about it, the more I like it. So at number 4, The Godfather from 1972, Academy Award winner, Best Picture. Okay, The Sound of Music is one of the reasons why you can never judge a book by its cover. Every time I see The Sound of Music, any kind of advertisement for it, you have Julie Andrews right there behind me on the hills twirling around. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to see that. And it's called The Sound of Music. It's almost like Singing in the Rain. It's like, what is that? These titles were just not indicative of what the movie is about. And so Sound of Music to me, it was not something I wanted to see. And I waited many, many years. I had seen all of the AFI 100s, and I think it was only Sound of Music and one other that I hadn't seen. So I'd seen like 98 of the films and didn't want to see Sound of Music. And so finally I was talked into seeing it, and I was like kicking myself for not doing this earlier. This film is not what it seems. The scenes you see are the first act of the film. There's a whole separate act which is totally contrasting the other side. It's like you're getting 2 for 1. It's a musical on one side and action thriller at the end, which I was not expecting. And that is what bumps this movie way up the charts. It went from like 0 to like number 3 in like a day. Just because, it was just so enthralled by this film, and it has such a satisfying ending for this film. The payoff is wonderful. It's long, but the music carries you through. And again, the second act is like you're watching 2 movies in one. So Sound of Music comes to us at number 3. Is from 1965. So this is a film that I am very familiar with. This is Casablanca. It comes to us at number 2 from 1942, and it stars Humphrey Bogart, Ingrid Bergman, Claude Rains, and Peter Lorre has a cameo in this. He kind of drives the story here. And what it is essentially is Casablanca is a town in northern Africa, and this is during World War II. Germany's occupying this area, so you can't get off. You can't get out. You need an exit visa to leave. And of course, one shows up through the character of Peter Lorre. And so put in a hero, a revolutionary hero from France who's trying to liberate the region, and all of a sudden you have a love triangle because that person brings in the bar a ex-lover of Humphrey Bogart, and that's Ingrid Bergman. And so that sets the stage for the greatest love triangle in history, and the ending is very satisfying, and it was perfect. And it was such that the studio didn't even know how the film was going to end. This film was a cluster from the very beginning. It wasn't supposed to work. This is a film that was being produced en masse by the studio. They just cranked out films, whatever. But this particular one just lined up perfectly. It was like everything lined up exactly the way it should have. The one-liners, the music was written in a certain way, and it's just everything about the film just came together at the last minute, and you have this instant classic. It is an effortless film. It's a film to me that I could watch it anytime. I don't watch it too much because I don't want to dull them. I don't want to overdo it. But this is a film that when I just watch it, I just like, wow, I'm home. They may sound strange, but Casablanca to me is home when it comes to film, because Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman, their chemistry is dynamic. And another thing about this film is that this film is actually being filmed during World War II, and no one knows how the outcome is going to be, but yet there's this cry for freedom in there, and the expectation that the good guys are going to win, even though nothing's been settled yet. So that is why this film is such a powerful film overall. In many ways, it's perfect. It has the story and the depth, it has the emotional impact, and it has everything you need. The one-liners, everything is part of culture. Casablanca is that great film, but there's one greater that I moved up within the past 2 years, which I actually may bump back after giving this review, but the film at number 1 I think deserves it as well, and so we're going to talk about that right now. So for now, number 2, Casablanca from 1942. Okay, so now we're down to number 1. I know you're anxious to hear it. If you're stuck around long enough, thank you so much for sticking around. This is an extremely long video, and I don't want to make this any longer than it needs to be, but I at least want to talk about a few movies that didn't make the cut, or right around that 100 range, that I considered putting in but just couldn't fit it into 100. And I will probably do a video of movies that are my favorite movies, which would include Rocky movies, would include Marvel movies and superhero movies and science fiction movies, that are favorite movies that I like regardless of what its technical merit is. Because a lot of these films, they're really good and I scored them high, but you're not going to watch them all the time. They just, you make them what they are and you deal with it and you rank them. So this list really is indicative of that. It's the quality of the film and why people may see a movie on one side to the other. And it's a way of kind of putting everything on a measuring stick, so you can kind of judge a movie like, Footloose against a movie like The Godfather and still have the same language. That's all I'm trying to do here. But my favorite movies are the ones that I would sit down and actually watch. And those are the ones I buy DVDs for, and etc. So that being said, I had movies like Rogue One. I like The Color Purple. Footlight Parade, those Bugsy Berkeley films was big productions where they have the overhead camera looking down. They do patterns and stuff, in water and stuff like that. And those are really cool films. I like Top Hats. Fight Club is one that could have been on here. White Heat, Poltergeist, Once Upon a Time in America, Raging Bull, which I wasn't a big fan of, but I appreciate. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. The Breakfast Club. These films, Roman Holiday, The Matrix. My wife would have loved me to put The Matrix on here, but I didn't. I think The Matrix is a little bit dated, quite frankly. And the third one was really horrible, and the second one wasn't that great. So it kind of, to me, makes the first one not quite as attractive. Run Lola Run. Yankee Doodle Dandy. There's so many films out there. You just can't fit them all in there. Rushmore was another good one. Dr. Strangelove was good. Rope, Hitchcock was good. I can go on and on. Philadelphia Story was also good. And it's just so many films that are so awesome. Ninochka is another one. Greta Garbo. Usual Suspects. The Muppet Movie is a classic, in my opinion. And so, yeah, there's just so many films, and I just couldn't fit them into the 100. So that's kind of where my head is, of what these films I was thinking about doing, but I just couldn't fit them in. And for whatever reason, I didn't. But I will do another list at some point. If this is well received, then I will do that. Also, remember that if you go to my membership section, if you go to members.theconservativetake.com, or just go to my website and go to the log on, it'll give you the option to register. It's free PDF of this, so you'll see all of it, and so you can kind of talk about it on your own if you like, if you care. So with that, let's get on to number 1. At number 1 is The Shawshank Redemption. This film, after seeing it recently, I looked at it and was like, you know what? This film is special. And I don't know where there's any weakness in this film. If you look at the way I score things, I score them on story, depth, emotional impact, intangibles, watchability, and my rating. That's how I score things. And you very rarely find a film that can do all those categories very, very well. This one does that very, very well. And you can almost make an argument to give it a 10 across the board, because the reason being is because it almost should have a 10 in the story and even a 10 in the emotional impact. I just fell short of giving a perfect score because I just don't want to give a film a perfect score. I want to leave some room for improvement, but I just don't see anywhere where this film falls short. Let's talk about the watchability. Okay, well, first of all, the payoff of this film, and may have some spoilers here, so if you don't want to know anything about this film, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. The watchability in this film is just, come on. Because you know it's going to end up okay, you suffer through this thing, right? You know that the two main characters are going to be best buds in the end, and so you're willing to deal with it because you watch it the first time you know it. The payoff is incredible. I've said for a while that I think this film has the biggest payoff of any film in history, or at least what I have seen. And basically what a payoff to me means is if you watch a film and it takes you through the mud and then at the end kicks you off the cliff, then that's not a payoff. Like 12 Years a Slave, at the end he gets off, but you do know that all of his buddies who he left behind are still in bondage. At least here, the two main characters who you know are going to be okay. That's number one. Watchability, that's going to be a 10. Intangibles, you have everything you need here. You have great acting across the board. You have a great screenplay, a story. The music is wonderful, and it's. I don't know if you had any weak spot. It could be here. Maybe you could take off here and there, but I just think it has enough to warrant it. The scene when they're on the rooftop and they're sipping the beers and all of that is just a classic scene. So emotional impact, come on, that is where I think it's probably even stronger than everything else, but I gave it a 9. And I think the story and the depth, because of the twist at the end, this absolutely should be a 10. So you can make an argument for this is a perfect film. And so even against my own wishes, I didn't want to put this above Casablanca, but looking at it objectively, this film, I hate to say it, is better than Casablanca. It's an absolute classic, lightning in a bottle, masterpiece of a film. The Shawshank Redemption should have won Best Picture. It's in the movie year of Forrest Gump and Pulp Fiction, and I think it was also Quiz Show, I believe, was also in that year as well. It's the second greatest year, in my opinion, to 1939, and so Shawshank Redemption is your number one film. It probably won't end up being my favorite film when I do another list. That may be Guardians of the Galaxy for all I know. Who knows? We'll check it out. But with that, I hope this was fun. I spent some time on this, and I spent several hours on this. And if you like this and like the things I do on this channel, where I take culture, TV, and movies and filter it right, please hit the like and subscribe button and that bell icon so you don't miss any future content. I hope this offers some counter programming of what's going on out there right now. And if you know what I'm talking about, this could be dated 20 years from now, but look at the timestamp, you know what I'm talking about when I mean counter programming. So that's what I was trying to do here, is give people something to think about and also to watch something that they can watch with the family at a time when we're spending more time with our families today. So with that, I hope you enjoyed the top 100 greatest conservative take movie reviews of all time based on my rating system. And there may be another one with my favorites, which would be a little bit different and probably more fun for you to watch, because a lot of silent films and foreign films isn't really that sexy, but it is what it is. So with that, with no further ado, have a great day, have a great night, and see you next time.